Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Guys, it has been 10 years since Fight Night. Now, if you don't know what that is, if you're a New York Islander fan, you know what I am talking about. February 11th, 2011. The New York Islanders were going in for a matinee matchup against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Does that ring a bell? Maybe not to some of you other fans, or maybe you newer Islander fans. We're going to be taking a look at the fight night in this video. We broke some records for fighting minutes, PIMs, all of that. We're going to be looking at that in this video. If you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. And let's take a look at the fight night of February 11th, 2011. The 2010-2011 NHL season was let's just say the least, a very difficult season for the New York Islanders. Now let's go back into the way back time machine. 2011, February of that year was quite interesting for the New York Islanders. At this time, we're going back to a time when the New York Islanders had the top line of Matt Moulson, P.A. Parenteau, centered by the line of everybody's favorite, number 91, John Tavares. And during this time, the New York Islanders are sort of in a, what is their identity? Because you've picked up, now we're in 2011 now, so this was a decade ago. You've recently gotten players like John Tavares in the 2010-2009 NHL draft. You've picked up Josh Bailey with a top 5 draft pick. Guys like Calvin DeHaan and Matt Moulson and P.A. Parenteau and all these guys that the Islanders have collected. Michael Grabner in the NHL draft. I miss Michael Grabner in the blue and orange. But the New York Islanders were sort of in a crisis where they have all these very good young players, but they just weren't able to get over the hump. They weren't able to find much success under their head coach, Jack Capuano, behind the bench. And the Islanders were starting to get taken advantage of. And this is where it leads to the fight night. And fight night kind of changed the identity of the New York Islanders. And this is a date that I will never forget. I remember watching the game, and you knew going into the game, this was going to be a WrestleMania fest. There was going to be a lot of fighting going on. The Islanders had recently called up Trevor Gillies. Yes, Clark Gillies' son. Trevor Gillies comes to, actually no, let me say that. He was not related to Gillies, but obviously everybody knew the relationship. Obviously Gillies in the name for Islanders fans was going to draw some interest, so he quickly became a fan favorite. Not to mention, he had no problem throwing the gloves off and getting into some fights. So obviously Trevor Gillies had no problem winning the fans over on Long Island. Not to mention the Islanders had recently called up from the Bridgeport Sound Tigers a 5'10 or 5'9 fighter who was playing with the Bridgeport Sound Tigers, Michael Haley, who was a guy that was putting up points, but let's be honest, Garth Snow called him up because he could throw those punches. And that's what the Islanders did. So now you have Michael Haley, guys like Michael Haley, Matt Martin, and Trevor Gillies in your bottom 6 to help protect your big boys up front. Because now, February 11th, right? The week before this game, the New York Islanders played the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh in, I think it was the Igloo at that time, or Mellon Arena. And God, I'm really going back in time here. And the Islanders played Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And this game, we actually saw Pascal Dupuis or Maxime Talbot lay a hit on Blake Como, who was on the New York Islanders. Again, another former first-round pick of the Islanders. And he was given what most Islanders and Islander fans and the organization felt was a dirty hit by Max Talbot, concussed Blake Como, and Como would miss significant time that season because of this concussion. The NHL did nothing to Max Talbot. No suspension, no sort of penalty to Max Talbot, even in the game, and things got even better from that point. As this game got along, it got quite chippy. The Pittsburgh Penguins feeling quite good about themselves at that time, recently winning a Stanley Cup, one of the powerhouses of the NHL for pretty much the last decade since then. And there was they felt like they could run the New York Islanders over. They have Sidney Crosby, Geno Malkin, Chris Letang. So the New York Islanders felt, all right, well, you know what? The league's not going to help us with this. So you know what? The league's not going to do anything. We're going to take this into our own hands. And that's what February 11th, 2011 did for the New York Islanders. Now, to make things even better, during this game, not only did Blake Comeau get concussed, but we saw a goalie fight between Brent Johnson, I think is his name, or Chad. I don't think it's Chad Johnson. I forgot his name, but it's something Johnson of Pittsburgh. He was the backup behind Marc-Andre Fleury, going up against Rick DiPietro. And this was already the beginning of the end for Rick DiPietro, one of the many nails in the coffin for DP's career with the New York Islanders. He got into a big fight with Johnson, and the two goalies scrapped. Johnson kind of kicked the shit out of Rick DiPietro, if I'm going to be honest. And you go to the bench, and you see Chad Johnson getting fist pumps from the bench. Marc-Andre Fleury, who was not in the game at that point, laughing. The Letang, Crosby, Malkin, all laughing, having a good time while they are disrespecting the New York Islanders. And you saw the despair and the embarrassment from that Islanders bench. And it was clear that the Islanders, when they played Pittsburgh that next week on Long Island, things were going to change. Now, between that game, between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders in Pittsburgh and Long Island, they had a Monday night tilt with the Calgary Flames. Now, I'm just letting you know this is a throwback because we're going to hear a name that maybe you wouldn't have expected. Yes, in Calgary, defenseman Dion Phaneuf laid a cheap hit, what some felt, on John Tavares. And John Tavares, again, a little bit frustrated because there was no lack of support really from his team or from the officials giving a penalty. Nothing happened to Dion Phaneuf, of course, quite shocking. And you actually heard Howie Rose during that progress actually say, the NHL is pretty much showing us there is a clear disconnect between the haves and the have-nots of the NHL. Pittsburgh, you were going to see pretty little princess Sidney Crosby. He was always going to get protected by the officials. Meanwhile, you've got the New York Islanders, who are, let's be honest, a smaller market team, not getting any sort of respect from the league. And you saw that in that Calgary Flames game. Dion Phaneuf, a cheap hit. And John Tavares, when he went back to the bench, slammed the door a couple of times before finally shutting it, sending a clear message to his team. He didn't have the C at that time, but you knew he was going to be the heir to that throne of captaincy for the Islanders. You knew that something was happening. And John Tavares, a guy that's normally very low-key, doesn't show much emotion or frustration, kind of a robot. And he was showing some physical emotion. He was quite upset, slamming the boards and very disappointed. And the Islanders would respond this February 11th, 2011 NHL game. So, now we get to the game. And pretty early on, it was quite apparent, even from the broadcast from Harry Rose and Butch Goring, the Islanders fans knew this was going to be a fight night. The stadium was packed, which I hate to say, back in the day, the Coliseum was not getting that packed on most nights. There was no hot dog and free soda deals for this game. They knew this was going to be an all-out brawl, and we saw exactly that. Early on, Michael Haley getting into a big fight, a couple of fights, getting into it with Craig Adams. We saw a couple of instances with Trevor Gillies and Matt Martin getting involved, and the Islanders were getting into it. We even saw Josh Bailey get into a little skirmish with Chris Kunitz or Pascal Dupuis, and he did pretty well for himself as the game goes along. The Islanders are just putting it on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Halfway through the second period, not even halfway through the second period, 6-0 New York Islanders. They pull the goaltender, Johnson, that had put his number on Rick DiPietro the week prior. So the Islanders get him out of the game, and Marc-Andre Fleury, coming in cold, would give up another 3 goals. He didn't look great in that game, and it was a 9-3 victory for the New York Islanders. By the end of the game, Pittsburgh had only had 2 players on the bench. Everybody else was going to get a free meal because those guys were going to be paying dinner that night at the Marriott, I just assume. So, a big win for the New York Islanders. Looking at the stats for this game, These are franchise record-setting penalty minutes, fights, all of that. We're going to be looking at that. So, the New York Islanders battered goalie Brent Johnson with their sticks and their fists and didn't need any help from Rick DiPietro to do it. Just 9 days after Johnson beat the Islanders in Pittsburgh and flattened DiPietro with a one-punch takedown in a rare goalie fight, the Islanders responded offensively and physically in a 9-3 victory on Friday night that will certainly be remembered for the outburst of violence that pockmarked the final two periods. The teams combined for 65 penalties that totaled 346 minutes and including 10 ejections. There were 15 fighting majors and 20 misconducts in the game that set records for both teams for most combined penalty minutes and left few players around to finish it. Things were so heated that a fence between the two dressing rooms was shut during a hallway lockdown. NHL suspensions will likely be a result too. It was a pretty entertaining affair, and we'll take the 2 points, said Islanders forward John Tavares. I've never seen anything like this before. It just wouldn't stop, but it just shows that we'll do anything for each other. The Islanders were still bitter about the previous meeting in which they were shut out for the second straight time in Pittsburgh. On top of that, they lost DiPietro for 4 to 6 weeks because of broken bones in his face as a result of Brent Johnson's devastating left punch. New York also lost forward Blake Como, which I discussed, to a concussion sustained from a hit by Maxime Talbot, who was a target of the Islanders' anger in the rematch. Talbot was jumped by Matt Martin in the second period to ignite the first brawl. Then he fought call-up Michael Haley in the third period before Haley skated down the ice to get in his licks on Johnson, too. Haley became an instant favorite among the over 12,000 in attendance who probably never heard of him before his recall from Bridgeport of the AHL on Friday. But they chanted his name every time there was another dust-up long after he was kicked out. The Islanders and Penguins will meet once more on April 8th on Long Island. If bad blood still remains, then it will likely be boiling on Pittsburgh's side. A guy who would challenge a goalie, it's kind of a cheap move, said Chris Letang. So I think we're going to play our game, but there are going to be consequences. So, we just saw an absolute Donnybrook. This was a hell of a game. Now, to make things even better, February 11th, 2021, a decade later. Tonight, the New York Islanders match up against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They meet up again. And, guys, I have to admit, this is pretty cool. I don't know if the NHL did this on purpose. And to make things even better, the game is at the Nassau Coliseum. So, are we going to see anything similar like that tonight? Probably not, especially with COVID. But the fact that these two teams played earlier this week, and the Islanders kind of got their last lickings in late on Pittsburgh in that last game, Pittsburgh may come out a little bit fiery. And the interesting thing is, we're going to see 3 players from that team in this game tonight. As for the Pittsburgh Penguins, the lone one of many, you have Chris Letang, Matt Martin, and who's the other name? Now I'm forgetting the other name, of course. 3 players, okay. So should be 3 players in the 2 lineups tonight who played in that game 10 years ago. Matt Martin, Josh Bailey, and Chris Letang. Okay. So Malkin and Crosby were not in that game. That's very good information to know. So, that's it. 3 players. Chris Letang, Matt Martin, and why am I forgetting the third guy? I literally just said his name. And Josh Bailey, who got in a fight, which that never happens. Mikko Koivu was the goaltender for the New York Islanders. So my Oilers fans out there, your star goaltender Mikko Koivu was in this game for the Islanders at that point. Before he went overseas, left the Islanders because of the miserable mess they were, which he wasn't wrong. But from this point forward, this set the tempo for the New York Islanders that they weren't going to get messed around with. You have guys like Zdeno Chara, Matt Martin, Michael Haley, Trevor Gillies, and this was the beginning of that culture for the New York Islanders. A team that wasn't going to get pushed around, even with star players like Josh Bailey, John Tavares, Pietrangelo, Michael Grabner. This was the beginning of the new New York Islanders team. They finally brought back these royal blue jerseys. These were a third jersey at that time. And no, they didn't have the messed up Al Arbor patch on the sleeve. Yes. You guys are going to mention that in the comments. I already know it. Yes, I have to fix the Al Arbor patch. But at the end of the day, it was the beginning of a new turnaround for the Islanders. Yes, they lost guys like Rick DiPietro and had to buy him out of a miserable contract. But you look at what has happened with the New York Islanders in the past 10 years. And there's a lot to celebrate. The New York Islanders finally have a goaltending tandem that works in Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. A good coaching staff led by none other than a Hall of Famer to be Barry Trotz behind the bench. Yes, you've lost John Tavares along the way. You've lost guys like Michael Grabner, Pietrangelo, Matt Molson. For guys like Thomas Vanek, that didn't really work out. But you also have really good players that have come in. Guys like Noah Dobson, who we're going to see in the future for the Islanders. You know, a guy like Devin Taves, who's now taking his talents elsewhere to Colorado. Matt Barzal. Do I need to mention what he does for the Islanders? This New York Islanders team is just in a much better spot. And all the questions we had 10 years ago, how they were going to move to Kansas City, how they were going to potentially move off of Long Island because they couldn't find a home. Now we have that question answered. The Islanders are going to play in a new arena this fall. The New York Islanders are a legit hockey team now. And this just is a kind of a reminder of, as the Islanders are struggling right now, they find themselves in the playoffs. The past 3 years, they've gotten to the conference finals, 2 years of making it past the Pittsburgh Penguins, and who was the other team? I forgot now. The Islanders have become a legitimate franchise that isn't a joke anymore. They are making the playoffs. They have a new home. They have good coaching, and eventually the talent's going to come there to where I truly believe, call me crazy, they could one day win that Stanley Cup again on Long Island. It's been way too long for the Islanders, but you look at the direction they have gone over the past 10 years, and this was kind of a time capsule. I watched that game this morning, and I was like, wow. They had gotta go to Moe's ads during the game, and the Ice Girls. Oh man, I miss that stuff. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of good things about this Islanders team. Over the past 10 years, the NYCB Live scoreboard and Barclays and everything in Brooklyn, that didn't work out. We've had to go through a lot as Islander fans. And I think other fan bases around the league don't appreciate, just making the playoffs every year. Like Minnesota, we make the playoffs every year, but we never get anywhere. Yeah, but you still make the playoffs, and you have a stable fan base, and you're able to have an arena. The Islanders have had a lot of those questions in question, and it wasn't even a guarantee that the Islanders would stay on Long Island. And you look at other teams like the Coyotes, who are still in the same spot they have been, or the Florida Panthers, who rumors have been around that they could move. And the Islanders used to be in that conversation, but now with new ownership and new management, the Islanders are a legit franchise and becoming a destination. And a fierce competitor to an original six franchise right down the road in Manhattan. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Islander fans, more specifically in this video, but other fans, if you didn't know about the Friday fight night of Friday the 13th, Friday, February 11th, I think it was called. Friday, February 11th, 2011. What are your memories from that time for the New York Islanders? And like I said, it kind of gives us a look back at where the state of the franchise was then compared to where it is today. And I have to admit, I'm very happy as a New York Islanders fan. I'm proud to be a New York Islanders fan. I was even then, but this was the beginning of the turnaround for this franchise and the strides they have taken since then. So guys, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you remember from that February 11th game back in 2011, the state of that franchise? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and even bigger subscribe down below. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, let's go Islanders.